Hey everybody, welcome to MGC. This is music, gaming, commentary, and today we're with our special guest Erik MacRae. We have a lot of topics to talk about, very uh, controversial topics, and we're going to start with CV, which is AKA the plague. we, we had to come up with code words. That's how controversial these things are. So we'll talk about these topics, 15 minutes each, and try to give it the honest time they deserve. I mean, 15 minutes is really not enough time, but I'll let you go, Erik. You take it away if you like.
Sure. So there's this one's going to be tough. There's so much that comes to mind with the topic of CV.
Yeah.
For me, one of the big things that comes to my mind immediately is what I think was a wake-up call that we all went through in terms of a move of censorship that has been in our cultures that was
Mm.
probably already there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
looking
Mm-hmm.
back from the nation of Canada, we had bills like I think it was Bill C-10, if I recall correctly, all these bills revolving around gaining control of internet platforms and media were being pushed forward for a while before. So, in terms of what's happened with the um, the the big tech as it is,
Mm-hmm.
it shouldn't come off, I guess, as too much of a surprise. We already had that being built up in the background. But then when CV came out, it was the opportunity for them to either launch their test of their control mechanisms or to sort of implement that. And we see that there was a lot of absolutely a lot of censorship going on, and that is concerning on so many levels when you
Yeah.
look at our charters of rights and freedoms. And um, it's been sort of causing people to re-educate in terms of what their constitutions say, what their
Mm-hmm.
constitutional documents say, and whether there's been little things written in to give government special exceptions to exploit and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, so moving forward, this whole thing has been such a drama bomb in terms of um, the Pinky in the Brain Laboratory.
Wait, did you
and
make up a new word? Drama bomb? Is it? Did you coin a
Yeah,
new term?
it's been a drama bomb in terms
Oh,
of
nice.
what's first said in terms of what was reported on
Yeah.
CV is, okay, this
Yeah.
is not how it originated. This is where it came from. And
Right.
then later the media is forced to change its tune
Right.
and say something completely opposite and agree with the opposition view to what was
Right.
initially reported.
Because I even when it comes to the origins, I'm not even 100% clear on this either. Because initially, I believed it came from a lab in WUHAN, but now to be honest, I'm just going to be completely frank. I'm not sure if it was the 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 USA that actually was the instigator in this situation. They're framing that nation of CHINA regards to they're the ones who are culpable. So I really don't know. But in any case, it does. One thing I think I can agree with that it did come from a lab, but we just don't know whose lab,
Right, and
right?
that's another interesting
Mhm.
perspective too. And we're all having that frustration dealing with what some are calling the fog of war. And in this
Mm,
case, not all war is immediately physical, guns,
no.
bombs, and bullets in nature. A lot of it is
Yes.
psychological,
Yeah.
informational, and ideological.
And biological.
And so we don't always know who's telling the truth right
Yeah.
off the bat, because one person might get caught with their hands in the cookie jar and they're
Mm,
called out on it. We
hmm.
immediately assume the side that's calling them out on has no propaganda of their own. So it is very hard
Yeah.
to fish through
Hmm.
these things and find out the whole truth of the matter.
Yeah.
And it's something that's provided such challenges. But I think the thing we all agree on is that there was a lot of manipulation of statistics. There was
Hmm.
a lot of move of censorship. Um, and there was a lot of agenda pushed,
Yeah.
and that is something that comes off as a chief concern
Yeah.
for this. Do you have any
Yeah.
additional commentary you wanted to add?
Yeah. That was perfect timing. I was going to ask you. Oh boy, this is going to get a little. I'm going to do this in a very respectful way, but okay. So what do you believe? Do you believe this is a real virus? Like, what is your perspective from your opinion? I'm just going to respect it, whatever you say. I'm not going to try
To
to
be honest, I actually
confrontational.
haven't asked myself that question. I've
Yeah.
generally assumed that CV is a real virus,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I've had to struggle with the debates of its origins and how
Yeah.
whether it was created by man
Yeah.
or self or naturally generated.
Right.
Um, but then that's just based on the information I've been
Yeah.
exposed to. There always is this the debate if you could alter someone's belief.
Hmm.
Like I understand where some people are coming from. If you could alter someone's belief, imagine.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is my view, but if you imagine if a such a plague did not actually exist, but you convinced people with
Yeah.
enough propaganda to believe it existed,
Right.
would that belief itself affect their human systems?
It,
Because definitely you notice when people's stress levels are
hmm.
exasperated and they
Hmm.
really believe something,
Yeah.
it can cause physical
Yeah.
effects. Am
So,
I saying
yeah.
that's what it is? I don't think so, but it is an
Psychosomatic.
interesting.
It's psychosomatic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole other area to study and
Yeah.
consider. And I think that
Oh.
to me, when you ask questions like that, you get
Hmm.
disturbed. It's very uncomfortable because you realize
Yeah.
that there are potentially a lot of high level social scientists and
Yeah.
psychologists that may know a lot more than we do.
Right. Right.
And you kind of feel powerless, like you're in their hands. And nobody
Right.
likes that feeling.
That's a good point. Yeah. Actually, I've been doing research since December 2019. Not nonstop, but for the most part, I've looked at the most, I guess, relevant. I'm going to say relevant, but the most significant papers in terms of what made the headlines in terms of alternative news. I don't tend to check the mainstream news too much, but well, I don't know where to start. But at first, yeah, it was very scary, and it is real for sure. In my mind, in my opinion, it is a real virus. And as to whether it's transmitted in the air or whether through its contact or blood, there's varying opinions on this. But yeah, it is real for sure, in my opinion, at least. And it is a combination of just it being biological and psychological as well, because you have something that is being not that it's coined. Actually, maybe it is coined now, because before it was not explainable as to how Germans supported or turned a blind eye to what the Nazis were doing. But now we have a term being used in the mainstream, at least in terms of conservative uh, crowds. They're using this terminology called mass formation psychosis to explain this kind of phenomena we're going through presently, and that what happened in the past as well. So I think it's a combination of both. But in my opinion, in my heart of hearts, it is real. But is it a real threat? I don't believe that so, because we see that the survival rate is 99.9%. So that's just from the science. So I follow the science, and that's what the science shows.
Uh, how much time do we have left on this particular
Seven
segment?
7 minutes. You
Oh, wow,
take it
that's
away.
excellent. So I can
Go
get
ahead.
into, there's sort
Go
of
ahead.
two things I'd like to talk
Yeah.
about, but
Go
getting
ahead.
into that more, that perspective of a potential bioweapon, if
Hmm.
true, is
Hmm.
intriguing based
Yeah.
on kind of what you just said, because in that sense, it would be a two-part maneuver, because
Hmm.
you have the original plague itself, the
Yeah.
CV, and
Yeah.
maybe that's of a certain efficacy, but the psychological pressure of the
Yeah.
being locked into your home, the business, all this other
And the
stuff.
news, and the news as well. Sorry to interrupt, but the
Yeah.
news as well as its own
Oh, for
pressure.
sure. The sort of informational terrorizing of the people,
Yeah.
um, that's probably providing enough stress to weaken the immune system, to
Yes.
weaken the human system, to give
Yes.
the actual biological component more efficacy.
Yeah.
So
You're right. You're right.
observing it as a two-part phenomenon, I think that's brilliant. That makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
As well as, so getting into the topic of
Mhm.
the ver- verifications and testing, I
Hmm.
think that's also an interesting thing to analyze. So I've heard a lot of reports that the fellow who came up with
Mhm.
the most promoted test
Yeah.
suddenly passed away just before
Oh.
this whole thing started, which
Wow.
gives an element of intrigue and suspicion involved with that,
Yeah, like a spy
for
thriller.
certain. Oh, absolutely,
It's
because
crazy. Yeah.
there are a lot of people who are raising the question of background assassinations. I hate to go there, but
Mm.
it's an
Right.
ugly topic.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's a reality too. Yeah.
But I can
Potentially.
only just assume, okay, that's true, because that'll sell us a nice dramatic video, but it could be true. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I find it very suspicious.
Mm.
Um,
Is there is there anything else you wanted to say on this topic before we move to the next one on the V? Because it kind
I
of
I
stems
think
out.
I think I'm satisfied
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
it.
Me too.
So there's, in general, I just encourage the viewer to study
Yeah.
for themselves and consider for themselves, and
Yeah.
not be afraid to be involved with a
Yeah.
plethora of platforms of where their information comes. But if
Yeah.
you're going to make a decision on this, in terms of a personal stance, do your best to make a
Yeah.
informed, educated one,
Yes.
and try not to violate your conscience.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good advice. I wanted to add as well because I'm a believer. We're both believers. We believe in God and Jesus Christ, and I think man may have planned this with evil motives, whatever it was, for power, control, or whatever. I don't know what their motives are, but I think God in heaven saw their hearts, and He said, "You know what? It's not going to be as effective as you want it to be. I'm going to spare a lot of people," and maybe He had a hand in this as well. That they're not going to end the world via this uh, CV. That's just my opinion. I mean, and we can see the reality is that how many billions of people are still on the earth? It's not 4 billion, it's still close to 6 billion, maybe more.
Right.
Yeah, I think easily. But okay, so the next topic is the V, aka the poke.
Right.
The jab. Yeah, did you want to? You can start off this topic as well. I don't know where to start with this. I mean, I'm a healthcare person, but yeah, you go ahead. I'll let you steer it.
All right. So getting into the the V poke, um, and I'm laughing. I'm remembering that episode of Supernatural, Pig
Yeah.
in a Poke.
The what? Supernatural with the brothers there?
Yeah, where there
The
was a time
Winchester?
loop episode, or
Yeah,
they
yeah.
got caught in a time loop and kept ordering a sausage with hot sauce. I think it's
Yeah.
called Pig in a Poke.
Taking a poke. No way. Nice.
At any rate, so when this whole thing began,
Yeah.
it began with incredible peer pressure, and
Well, hold on. Sorry to interrupt, but wasn't it? It took time for between the March 2020, where the WHO declared a global pandemic, and then from the time that they were able to fast track the V.
that is
Well,
correct.
that was what,
That is,
like a year, or I don't know.
I can't
Like
remember off
Operation
the
Warp
top of
Speed.
my head. It was at
It
least
was
a
at least
few
a year.
months, and probably, yeah, I'd agree,
Yeah.
probably a year. It was not immediately
Yeah.
available.
Okay. And
So
yeah.
at
Sorry.
first, it was all the other generic measures we all had
Yeah.
in place: the arrows on our warehouse floors, the
Yeah.
um, spacing, and
Right.
the mask,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and all that.
Yeah.
But when the once it came out,
Yeah.
another interesting side of this was all the varying so-called competitors for producing the V-pokes, was a topic all itself. The various companies
Mm-hmm.
associated with its production,
Yeah.
and the question of where they were producing it, why they were producing it in certain areas. For example, some had production facilities in India that were considered very questionable. Some had others in possibly in China,
Mm-hmm.
some in the States.
Yeah.
Um, so it's interesting because you wonder, is this really are these all groups sort of in league? Are they really competing with one another? Is it an illusion of competition?
Hmm.
And I'm not going to mention the names of the companies
Yeah.
because I
Probably
don't
best
know
not
if
to.
that'll be picked up as a hot word, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you know what I'm referring
Yeah.
to.
Big pharma. Yeah.
There's a lot of questions there.
Mm.
Um, so immediately you started having information coming out in terms of claims of what are in
Mm-hmm.
the V poke. And obviously some were not appreciated and were labeled with the
Yeah.
branding term disinformation. And I hope that won't prove to be a hot word. And
No, I don't think it
that
will.
was moved against and removed.
Yes.
And usually radical censorship like that is now popularly considered I wouldn't say a guaranteed move of admittance to the truth, and then you assume the opposite, the thing being censored is 100% true because of that, but at least it's an admittance that you don't have the competency to deal with every argument of that what you engage in censoring. So that in itself definitely put more weight for the critical thinker on the argument against the VPOK and the various claims of what it contained, and the moral issues regarding that, which are numerous. There were, because there are not multiple objections for the religious community of believers in Jesus. There were certain things that were asserted in terms of components based on cell lining and other things that were morally compromising, perhaps for a Christian,
right?
That might not be morally compromising for an atheist debating whether they were going to take the VPOK or not.
Because of the cells, the cells that come from pretty much a baby, right? Yeah.
So there's been a whole group, and again, there's a lot of labeling here. So
yeah.
Whether someone was against all VPOKs throughout all history or not, or just the CV19 brand in particular is an issue, because people often were labeled as being against all of them with that coverall label.
Yeah,
I don't look down on anyone who has that view, and I'm still not sure what my view is on this because I have to do more study on it. But that was in itself a move of disinformation, because not everybody's saying that making an argument against the VPOKs were of a position being against all VPOKs of all types, and not everybody agreed on whether one brand versus another had the same problems or not. But what you did see, you'd have to admit, was this: it wasn't only a religious movement of those who were rejecting it. Interestingly enough, there was plenty of people of all creeds and all professions. You had atheists, you had Muslims, you had Hindus, of all people, in some amount of numbers, probably not anywhere near a majority, but some considerably sizable group rejecting these things based on reports.
The mandates,
that is something that is considerable. I've in a way, they've almost had a unifying effect.
Yes, I was going to say that.
Yeah,
Great 100%. Awakening. It's a great awakening that's taking place. To use that term.
Yeah. And that's interesting too, because you can say the reverse happened for those who are for the VPOK. It's had a unifying effect. So it's splitting two groups of society.
Polarized.
And on one side you have on both sides you have people of a variety of lifestyles all in agreement on this thing. And that's that's interesting, the two camps that it created. And it's been building, I think, over time. You keep seeing this happening more and more. The more these issues are pressed, the more I see a separation, and I'm confused of how to deal with that, to be honest, as a person. And as well as some of the other topics we're going to get into in the next segment, the same thing comes up. You see a separation beginning in our society. And I'm going to risk offending some people here. I see a lot of people are in tears about that separation. I'm not so sure I'm in tears about that separation and increasing. In fact, even I'm going to be very offensive potentially here, not purposely so, but just thinking from my perspective. If it got to the level where minus a civil war, it'd be great. None of us want a civil war with guns and bombs and bullets. But if it did get to the point where we had a literal separation of nations, if Canada and the States, for example, broke into two different states where they said, okay, everybody with this mindset,
you go up
we're going to go here, you're going to go here, here's the border.
Here's the
Don't
line.
try to pass that border.
You'll get
I'm not
shot.
sure I'm against that or see that as a bad thing, because
Right.
when you mix these two groups,
Yeah, it's worse.
they tend to be worse off. They
Yeah,
tend to be constantly at each other's throats,
that's
and the
yeah.
violence increases.
That's where
It
they're
may make more
borders. Yeah.
sense to separate them
Yeah, that's
at
why there are
that point.
borders. Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. Yeah. In regards to my perspective, did you have more to say about that, Eric?
No, no, I'm
Oh,
good. Go
okay.
ahead.
Well, in terms of my perspective, being a healthcare professional, one of my jobs was, I hate to say this, but the dark side of the nursing homes is we give medication to patients, to seniors without their consent. That's that's the truth. I'm not going to lie about it. And it hurts to admit that, because I've done it many times where you crush the medication and then I got to hide it in their food. And oh my goodness, like, I hope God forgives me for that, because if I go back to that profession and yeah, enables me to work again, I'm going to tell them every time I hid the medication in your food. So I'm going to tell them, just be frank. This is to help you though, but I'm going to hid medication in your food. So you have the choice. You have the free will of giving you the power to decide, do you want to do this for your health, or you can refuse it and it's fine, but know that these are the consequences. Your blood pressure will be high, etc. But I hid medication in your food, instead of just lying about it and pretending, your ice cream is just normal ice cream. It isn't. And I felt that maybe God kind of had a little payback on myself. I mean, personally speaking, because these last 2 years have been pretty rough. I haven't worked since 2019 as a nurse. And yeah, consent is very important, to have informed consent. And in terms of the V working, it's done more harm than good, in my opinion. It didn't have to be
Right.
this way. We know that seniors were the group that was most vulnerable. Children, virtually nobody died from it, like without that were not poked. So it
Right.
was really the 65 and above that were most susceptible, according to the science. But that might even be false too. I feel like the numbers are being fudged, because if they were true, and in fact, whatever the number is, you just throw around a number, 70 or 80%. It seems to be the minimum standard that they push around in the news. And 85% of citizens of this country are poked. So why the mandates? Why the pressure? If that was actually true, why the pushback? It was only until the Russia-Ukraine situation where they said, "Oh, we can't handle both at the same time. We can't." I feel like they can't spin both at the same time. Their spin doctors are too busy. We can't do two topics at once and spread misinformation on
Right.
two things at
Oh,
two
that's a
fronts.
whole topic in itself in terms of the relevancy, the timing with the
Yeah,
in regards to the timing approximating the
yeah. The
18-wheeler conga line,
the 18 wheelers. Yeah,
and
yeah. Go
the
on.
convenience of that for the mainstream coverage.
Yeah,
That's a whole topic in itself and debate in
yeah,
itself.
yeah. You can
So
start that. You can start that topic if you like.
yeah, well, just getting back into the topic of the polarization here,
Go
that
ahead.
is intriguing, because I'm forced to confront a reality where there's two sides on this,
Hmm.
and there is potentially a center that I'm not going to deny there's a center, but
Yeah, yeah,
on the part of pulling these two sides further and further in one direction or another, you have obviously a group, probably high level intellectuals and or agenda people. Maybe their position is intellectual and not intellectual, who are dead set on the agenda. Their soul is interchangeable with the agenda, and they're not going to change their goals, their agenda, or their opinion,
Are,
no
are
matter
these
who it hurts or who it stops.
are
Oh,
these the proletariat, or are these the
no, no,
aristocrats? Or
I'm
you?
not referring to that on in this case. I'm talking about the mindset with regards to VPOK stances. There are some people that are
Yeah.
dead set in terms of the force creating this separation in our culture. I think there are groups that are just going to move to separate
Oh,
radically for those
so
that are upset about that separation building up, and then in
yeah.
on the extreme end, as you go more towards those who are being pulled along with them, there are some people who have might change their opinion one way or another, and
Okay.
the whole thing is kind of a painful mess at this point. So I don't want to sound like in me saying it might be better to separate these groups is
Right.
not acknowledging that not everybody is 100% of the exact same mind, that there is variation in this. There
Mm-hmm.
are a lot of free thinkers, and I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are hurt by it one way or the other. I do
Mm-hmm.
want to be sensitive to that. Yeah, that said, again, my
Okay.
personal stance is the fact is that there are some irreconcilable factors in the thing,
Mm.
and you've got to deal with that in a
Such
manner
as,
that's realistic.
can
Um,
you share an example of one
right.
of those irreconcilable
So some
differences?
groups that completely reject the concept of informed consent and freedom of bodily autonomy, who are
Yeah.
hard lined on that and will not change, and
Wow.
others who are hard lined on. And I'm some people are going to get angry at me like this, like I'm taking a centrist position on this. On this topic, I'm kind of hard lined that
Yeah.
I believe in informed consent and I
Yeah.
believe in freedom of bodily autonomy, and I'm going to go
Yes.
with the other group separating the other way on this
Mm.
topic. Maybe
Right.
not on every topic, but on this topic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you've got to deal with that polarization some way or
Yeah.
another. And is us eventually getting to the point where one side's like, no, we're going to do this and we're going to do it to you too, and we're going to make everybody the same. And then the others are like, okay, we're going to make your stance like ours. We're going to reverse brainwash you. If it comes down to it, where what do you do? Are we going to have a war with each other and everybody kill each other, or could we negotiate a
Mm.
trade? It's interesting that you kind of form territories, and it's almost like territories have hostages. So you might have one
Yeah.
area that has some people, they're like, we don't want to live in this kind of a system. We'd rather be in a nation like this. And another, like, we don't want to live in a nation like this and we want to be in that system. But they keep
Mm.
staying there and teaching their ideology instead of, if you really want to be in a
Yeah.
nation that's associated with that type of ideology, why
Yeah.
not just go there
Move to
instead of change this
CH
other nation?
move to the CHINA, right? The
Yeah,
CCP or whatever they
yeah.
call it.
It's if you want to experience it, you can
Yeah.
actually
Go
gain the
ahead.
practical
Yeah.
experience.
Go to Cuba, or is it Cuba still communist essentially?
Right. And I admit
Go
that's
there.
not going to be an easy stance for
No.
everybody. We all
No.
have financial difficulties. A lot of
Yeah.
us are dealing with that. So obviously moving up and right to a country
Yeah.
whose ideology you appreciate more is not so simple for everybody. But
Yeah.
if you work at it, surely you can accomplish it. But,
Mm.
uh, you know, that said, I don't know, maybe this, if even if you separated the two, it might end up like, gosh, I'm not going to go into the politics of the topic, but like,
Okay.
the Israel Russia Ukraine issue, where just separating, even if you did, that doesn't guarantee nobody's going to start lobbing rockets into your
Yeah.
territory from
Yeah.
one side or the other.
Right.
But it might be a generally better format than everybody's at each other's throats all the time. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have all the answers. I
Mm.
take a stance that could be wrong on this,
Hmm.
but um, at this time, maybe the separation is a good thing,
Yeah.
is my opinion, if it
Yeah.
occurs. But
Yeah.
ideally, it would not have to occur with a physical war
Yeah.
or a lot of bitter feelings.
Right. And that actually, it's one of the strong points of a democratic society is that we can have these philosophical or ideological differences and separations in our minds and in our creeds, but we can still live peaceably. We can still respect each other's opinion. I mean, for the most part, I feel like that is what democracy is about, that you can have the left and the right and they can live in the same country and still respect each other and love each other to some degree. Although I feel like the right tends to be a little more respectful in that regard. They don't revert to violence like Antifa and all that. Punching someone because they're wearing a red hat or whatever it is. But is there anything else you wanted to talk about when the topic of the V before we move on to the 18 reelers there?
Well, just to add to that commentary, I think that's so interesting because it's something I've had to grapple with, because there is so much cultural pressure from sort of, in general, two sides on this. And it's more connected to the general ideological debates of what we've been exposed to with, for example, the socialist world and the communist world, if you will, between that and those of a differing view. And so a lot of people are here telling us, listen, the only way this can be solved is it's going to come down to violence. And it takes a lot of courage and internal fortitude to go against the grain of that and say, though I, with my eyes, am seeing people who are laying down flowers at the feet of
Hmm.
SWAT police getting beaten
Mm.
and trampled and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And mind this topic of VPOK, but the same kind of thing where it feels like it's not working doesn't mean it isn't having an effect. And I've seen a lot of things hinting to me that peaceful resistance does work. It's a
Mm.
resistance, but it's in love, it's in peace.
Right. Oh,
I mean, butcher everybody. And
like
there's so
like
much
the
meaning in that. And as a believer, we have the command to leave vengeance to our Lord and not
right.
take it into our hands. So
Well said.
you should be able to do something about this.
Okay, I'm gonna segue to the next topic. Before I do that, just gonna
Absolutely.
say that if someone does get sick from the CV, that there are treatments. You should seek treatment because people do. The truth is, people do get sick and die from this, but there's a slight chance. But if you do fall into that category, there are treatments, and you can look them up. I think it's Dr. Zelensky. I'm not sure right now. He's a Jewish doctor, and he has this protocol, and it's just vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and other things I can't say here, but rhymes
Right.
with piver Plectin. You know what I mean? Won a Nobel Prize for that. This Japanese guy. So the next topic is the 18 wheelers, and that started in Canada. I'm proud of them, and now in America it seems to be happening. So, Erik, I'll give you the floor again.
Right. This was such an awesome movement,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's very symbolic that it started with those driving those
Yeah,
18 wheelers, etc. That
yeah,
these are the working class. These are the
yes,
average Joe, just saying no to a doctrine and a mandate for a stance on what they accept into their body, sort of being forced on them and contingent on their job. And where before you sort of had two stand. It's interesting from the perspective of believing communities that I've been in, with a lot of are of the mindset of, okay, just give up the job and trust in the Lord to provide another job. And in many cases it did work out perfectly like that. So
right.
then a lot of believers even say, well, is this something I should really be supporting, this 18 wheeler conga line? Because
Mm.
they can just choose a different job, surely. And I don't
Mm.
think that's an accurate position, because there's
Right.
the
Yeah,
there
why?
it's the principle of give the devil an inch. How
Mm.
many times are you going to surrender to
Yeah,
somebody putting this mandate you don't agree with, and
yeah,
rules and restrictions? And what guarantee that you don't have do you have that whatever job sector you move into, when you leave that one, that they won't
yeah,
press that there later
yeah.
anyways?
Good
So
point.
eventually you have to have some strength to resist in some way. So I think it was an incredible movement. And the thing that shocked me was how peaceful it was.
Mm-hmm.
You could clearly see that most of the reports of, like, I don't know what they were trying to tie to it, these alt, and I'm still not sure what they mean by alt right or
Mm.
extreme right wing terrorist organizations. And they cite things like the Proud Boys. I admit I don't know
Right.
anything about the Proud Boys, but are
Okay.
you talking like Nazis? Are you
Right.
talking KKK? Like,
Right.
there's not a lot of clarity with the term anymore, what they mean by that. But I didn't see anything really indicating that a great deal of the people in the movement
Yeah.
were, for example, of a white skinned supremacist type view. On
Yeah.
the contrary, they were just people agitated about being bullied by a
That's right.
medical agenda, and doing something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is weird how it was dealt with by
Leader.
our first minister.
Justin
um
there. Yeah.
yeah, it,
Right.
it was
Yeah. The
like, I get
statement.
it, okay,
Mm-hmm.
security concern, there's a big, like, I can sort of see an argument where you'd say, okay, there's a great many trucks at your door, anyone could stash an AK in one of these. And yeah, you could sort of say it's a security concern, but at the end of the day, there's
There's no
how many
proof.
times
Yeah.
that is problem with that argument is it's possible for any and every protest. Anyone can have a weapon on them and a
Mm-hmm.
concealed firearm. They don't
Mm-hmm.
have to follow the laws if they're going to just subvert the laws. So there's no guarantee for any
Oh,
political leader of this
mm,
absolute safety bubble that you can enjoy where you can't be assassinated potentially. So you always have to ask, if you're the political leader, do you take the risk to come out and address the people? But
mhm, mhm,
secondly, it seemed that um, the offense on part of our prime minister was on the part of the ideologies regarding that level of governmental power and that ability to enforce rules and regulations of this nature.
mhm.
And he just threw every name at the book.
Yeah.
Comes off as a guy with not a lot of self-awareness or sensitivity,
Mm, mhm.
which is kind of shocking to a lot of the Canadian populace too,
Yeah.
because that's exactly how he's portrayed himself and
Right. Right.
the image he's built up. But in this moment, it definitely did not match up.
No.
And I think that move backfired on his agendas and group a lot, because it brought up a lot of old things that were generally not noticed and raised up questions of things from before. For example, the various financial scandals that are
Mm,
surrounding our prime minister, and
yeah.
moments of ugly things being caught on video in the House of Parliament
Oh.
that were related to things that had nothing to do with the VPOK itself and
Oh.
the 18-wheeler Congo line, but other
Mhm.
topics
Yeah. Yeah.
that now they went from maybe being a YouTube video with 1,000 views to a YouTube video with 250,000 views. And
Oh.
it was something from before and unrelated, and now
Yeah.
it's snowballing.
Hmm.
Um, so it seems like what what he did was not wise, even for his own platform. And
Mhm.
but that's also raised a lot of concern because, you know, again, his affiliation with um, what's the word we're going to use for these guys in this case, Santa Claus's group, um, is coming
The
more
Li
to light. Uh,
Liberals. The party, you mean?
well, the prime minister and his in crowd within them. Yeah,
Oh.
I'm not sure
Okay.
if every member of that party
Yeah.
shares the same allegiance or views
Right. Right.
entirely or not. But
Probably not. Yeah.
what I do know is that there's been a lot of evidence that he has that connection. And now the question is, what do they do when the agenda is threatened by means of a legitimate,
Yeah.
peaceful movement? Are
Mhm.
you still going to go all? I keep remembering that story of, I think it was King Adoniah in the scripture, where he
Yeah.
exalted himself. He's like, I reign. And then are you going to come in with military power to try
Mhm.
to maneuver a takeover here when it's looking like you're not in a position to hold power democratically? Or are you going to just peacefully submit?
Mhm.
Um, or are you going to keep tampering with the process? And
Mm.
you know, for those of us who are confident in having a divine creator involved,
Mhm.
I think that our best thing is to pray on this and get him as involved in possible judging the matter, because
Yeah.
we don't know what happens in the background.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things outside our power. And one thing I'm very concerned about is, you know, I mailed a lot of our MPs during this,
Oh.
my positions on various topics regarding this thing.
Yeah.
And I decided, I was afraid to, because obviously I have some mind of this can be traced back to me, and
Yeah.
I could end up on somebody's hit list in the worst case
Right.
scenario. But I decided I would take the risk anyways,
Mm.
because what do I have to lose at this point? Um,
Right. Right. Right.
so, and what I found is, looking into it and hearing from others, there are concerns that a lot of people in power over certain functions of government have an ability to get away with a certain amount of censoring, dismissing, hiding emails they received and things like this. And now, without that level of accountability present in our halls of government, there's such a room for radical corruption, and we need that accountability to be in there. We need the truth
Right.
to be revealed on all these matters, and we need people to, if they've made a mistake or done something self-serving and very damaging, to just humble themselves and accept some amount of the consequences of that,
Right.
because it's just not good for our government. any
Yeah.
way. It's not healthy.
Yeah.
And the thing with the banks was terrible.
Oh, withholding
I
the
gotta say,
funds, the
oh
fundraiser,
yeah,
withholding that and freezing accounts, things like that.
right.
Yeah.
Um, it
Yeah.
comes
No, it
off as
was.
a total move of bullying
Yeah.
and intimidation, where they want
Yeah.
people living in terror. Like, oh, can I have any normalcy of life now because my bank can just shut me down? And
Yeah.
now people are going to talk about it, and that again can backfire because people might just start talking, okay, I'll just withdraw my funds and transfer it
Yeah.
into a bank that's not centralized. And
Exactly. Bitcoin.
the debate of what banks are available for that.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's now come up as a topic. And
Yeah.
it's like it's very Orwellian, as you would
Mm.
say. It's there are days I'm insecure about it. There are days I say,
Mm.
what does it matter? What power do I have over it? And mostly I'm coming to the conclusion all I can do on some of this is pray.
Mm.
But in terms of the reactions to it, I have cause on one hand to be excited about some of the things I see, and on another hand, I have cause to be absolutely concerned. So I'm not
Oh,
sure at the end of the day where to stand every time.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, are you done talking about that?
Right. Well,
That
actually,
thought?
I'll give one more thing
Go ahead.
commentary. So I actually did participate in some of these
Yeah.
movements related to the 18-wheeler conga line
Okay.
movement. They had some visitations in Toronto,
Yeah.
and I was
Stop
there.
over. Good. Good.
The first one was kind of we did have a lot of 18-wheelers involved, and but their ability to penetrate into the city was limited by quick action on the account of the officers in the
Oh.
city. And
Oh boy.
because there's big differences between Ottawa police and Toronto police, and you have to remember that Toronto is very much an economic hub and a place of major investment for the economy,
Yeah. Bay
uh,
Street.
and as well as very much a power head for the Liberal Party as well in a
Mm.
lot of ways. A huge amount of their voting base is in
Yeah.
Toronto. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of reasons to explain that. But in the first one, the trucks were largely blocked, but a large amount was still able to slip in to make enough horns to be annoying, horn blasts to be annoying. But I was there in like another one after that, and the officers had blockaded so much off that there were virtually no trucks, and everything had become a foot march. But the foot march
Oh.
itself was powerful. It might have been even more impactful, I think, than the trucks,
Yeah.
because people were moving
Yeah.
almost like they looked like an army, but
Wow.
they were a peaceful army.
Right.
But everybody who was living in the downtown core, hiding in their shops and their daily life, started seeing with firsthand with their own eyes this massive move of
Yeah.
people passing through with Canadian flags
Right.
saying to end the mandates, and
Yes.
their whole reality that they've been portrayed that this is just some
Yeah.
tiny minority
Fringe. Right.
got questioned. And I think I did see firsthand many people being moved that you might think otherwise didn't want to support this, that were like, when they saw it was this big with their eyes, they're like, well, I
It's a
absolutely
wake
want
up.
to be part of this. And they were taking pictures and were excited
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. It's a
Some
wake up
people might
call.
have been,
Yeah.
yeah. So that
That's really
it
good.
was I was proud to attend it,
That's good.
and met a lot of interesting people. And yeah, I don't know if I should go into this too, but for the benefit of the viewers of the videos,
Okay.
this is sort of a side topic that's somewhat related. A
Okay.
lot of drama came up, and
Oh
I made
no.
a video about this in terms of
Yeah.
your status regarding the VPOK and dating actually has become a thing of some controversy. You had
Dating,
Twitter.
like romantic dating, when
Oh
men
yeah,
and women.
absolutely. Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
dating.
Yeah. Pure
Depending
blooded
on
dating.
your VPOK status became
Yeah.
an issue for some. So you had
Ah.
some of those major tech corporations trying to censor a dating platform that was made for people whose stance were they were not getting VPOKs.
I think is that pure
Um,
blooded dating?
that's right.
Oh, okay.
So for those that were looking to participate in dating, know that there are platforms out there, if that's your stance, and they do
Right.
exist, and they were partly
Yeah.
censored, but they are still operating. So you
Yeah,
have
they are.
options.
They are
Um,
operating.
I think that's just something I felt for the viewer would be good for them to know, because I don't think anyone should be too isolated in this, and people
Yeah.
should have the freedom to make all the same decisions they would before. So
To
I
fight a
guess we can
woman
move forward
or a
to
man.
the
Yeah.
topic of
Yep.
our time now,
Sure.
the Russia
Okay. Yep.
Ukraine
Yep.
incident.
Okay. But before we get there, I'm just gonna share, just to chime in
For
here
sure.
regarding the Congo line. I hate saying that. I mean, I respect what they've done. I respect the prime minister, to be frank. I respect Justin, and I think the Bible tells us to respect all leaders. So I don't look at him in a bad way. But when you say something so divisive, that has to be called out too. Um, there's a statement or a quote that says, when the people who just wanted to be left alone, when you affect those people, you're going to see the reaction. I think that's exactly what we saw or are seeing with the 18 wheelers. These are people who just wanted to be left alone. They were doing their jobs since the pandemic started, and without a complaint, and expected to do the work efficiently and without any loss of hours, and just to do it, as if everything's normal. And they did it. And now they pushed against them. So there's going to be, you can only push somebody so far, and then they reach their limit. And I think God moved them, in my opinion. I think God moved their hearts to say, we're going to make a stand, not for ourselves, but for the rest of the nation. Because if we're the last line of defense, everything crumbles in terms of people's freedoms and all that. So that's my opinion on that. So I guess, so with that, so we will segue to the current topic that pretty much is like a new chapter that has started with the situation in the Ukraine and with Russia. So again, I'll
Right.
let you take the floor, Erik.
Oh, thank you. So, yeah, this whole thing is very suspect in a lot of ways, based on other related discussions that are coming up. Our
Yeah.
the relation to our Santa Claus group, as I'm going to call them.
Okay, I'm not sure what you mean. Is Santa Claus like the LIBERALs, that, or is it the
Uh,
WORLD economic,
yes, yeah,
like
that's the one.
FORUM? Okay, I don't really know
Say
much.
it. It'll get.
I'm
We're
not
gonna
going to
get
say it,
censored.
but I don't know much about that, so I'm not going to
Yeah,
comment.
so
So you
there's
can
been a
go ahead.
lot of debates coming up on that, because Putin at one point supposedly, as some are saying, he was connected with their global leaders program, and that he
Oh,
became disgruntled against them, though, has been another
huh.
report. So I don't know
Yeah,
where the
yeah, yeah.
truth is on that.
Me neither. Yeah.
In terms of Ukraine, I don't want to touch the Russia Ukraine thing too much,
Yeah.
in terms of giving who's in the right and who's in the wrong here.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's a very complicated situation.
Yes.
Um, it's uh, it's not so simple, and frankly, most of the people, as far as I can tell, putting on Ukraine flags are totally virtue signaling and
Yeah.
just have no mind of their own. And
Well,
that said, is everyone with a Russia flag in this issue
right.
100%? They're not
Right.
virtue signaling. I wouldn't say that either.
Right.
So
Right. Exactly.
I have no idea, but
Mm.
my concern is, one thing you immediately notice, what was the hot topic? It was the trouble caused by our government and the mandates, and
Hmm.
Liberal Party approval is rapidly dropping. And
Hmm.
I hate to say it, they deserved it for kind of brought this on themselves.
Right. Right.
There are times where you have to sort of tank from the consequences of some of your decisions, and
You have to
an
tank or take.
immediate
You say tank or
sort of
take.
tank.
You have to tank as a
Yeah,
consequence. Yeah.
yeah, sort of endure sort the consequences of what some of the agendas you've pushed have caused for the people, and
Mm.
the ways you've reacted to people's stress with that. And so they were taking a very natural reproof, I'd say, from the surrounding
Mm.
culture, and
Yeah. Yeah.
on the in terms of what was being revealed in the news. And immediately now there's a chance to just play the change the topic.
Yeah.
Like if you've ever been in a heavy debate or something like that with somebody over a very controversial topic, you say,
Yeah.
okay, let's change the topic. Well,
Right.
that's exactly what happened in our news media. So now everything's about
Mm.
Russia and Ukraine, and nothing is about the the
Yeah. The
18
CV
wheeler conga lines,
and
the
that. Yeah. All of
mandates,
that.
new stances, updates on that, or any consequences. injuries from the V poke, all that stuff is being
Um,
again flooded with the next great
I
topic.
don't. I agree, but I disagree because what we're seeing from the mainstream or the legacy media is that yeah, they have stopped covering that. Well, not stopped, but they've lessened the
Mhm.
like the vitriol regarding that. But on the side of the alternative press or the you could even say the conservative leaning people, they are still covering it. You still see videos being posted regarding the conga line. I almost said the word,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so that they're still revealing truths about that, but maybe not to the same. Like the quantity is kind of diminished a little bit, but it's
Yeah.
still trickling out there. Yeah, I think you're right. It is. I don't want to take sides, not because I don't want to be brave. It's just because I don't really know. It's still in its
Oh,
infancy. There's still a lot that is going to reveal itself, and time will reveal it. God will reveal it.
right.
I mean, if
Yeah.
there,
So,
yeah, let's go ahead.
like, oh, something that just came to my mind too
Go
that's
ahead.
really interesting for that as well is Pierre Poilievre from the
Mm.
Conservative Party has produced a video in terms of Russia's ability to sort of bully people
Oh.
into silence, being based in its control over oil supply and
Mm.
gas supply, things like that. And
Yeah. Yeah.
he's put in a whole video relevant to that. So how that affects Canada, and it's worth checking out
Mm.
based on his position.
Mm-hmm.
That said, yeah, there for me there has been that question whether this was just a very convenient matter to come up for them to sort of cover up the issue. But I'll concede as well. Yeah, absolutely. There is still some coverage of the
Mm-hmm.
18 wheeler conga line, particularly the one in the States now is
Yeah.
more popular to talk
Sure.
about, and how that what effect that's going to have we're going to see
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms of this conflict.
Mm-hmm.
um, it's very complicated. I see some images that can be disturbing to some viewers. Things like
Yeah.
you'll see an apartment hit by a ballistic missile of some sort, apartment building, and immediately the assumption is, well, everyone in there is civilians. Now, I'm
Mm.
familiar with the tactics that Al Qaeda and
The
various
Palestinians. Yeah.
terrorist organizations used, where they
Yeah.
purposely
Yeah.
hole up in those places for this reason.
Exactly. Yeah.
So a lot of I know there's probably propaganda on both sides. It's why it's so uncomfortable to talk about this, because you don't
Yeah.
know 100% what's true. But
That's
some
right.
have said that for Russia, what they're doing is called denazification, and they're blasting what they targets they hold to be kind of radical Nazi communist style
Oh.
people, and apparently they're claiming that they're holding up in these places. So when you see a move like that,
Mm-hmm.
you have to consider whether it's possible that that's something like that. And it's easy to condemn it, but
Yeah.
uh, I wouldn't rush to assume one way or the other. So there is the
Mm.
Russian side should be heard, the Ukrainian side should be heard,
Mm-hmm.
and so an oversaturated press is not a good thing. And you have to think critically, because
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned this previously with you in a private discussion, but
Mm-hmm.
one of the frustrating things about media when certain ideologies are involved is it becomes a distraction to there's a sort of finger pointing distraction, and
Yeah.
people have this, sometimes we fall into this simplistic tendency to assume that one is the bad guy and one is the good guy, and it may not
Right.
exactly
Like a
be the
movie.
actual truth of the situation. Like,
Sure.
and the example I gave was when communist Russia was starving Ukrainians to death. Interesting, that's Ukraine too on this topic.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and they were creating an artificial famine in their land. Their
Yeah.
newspapers were reporting that, well, there's a famine in Germany. Now, some
Yeah.
people familiar with the attacks of disinformation would be assumed, well, communists are, therefore the person they're saying are the evil guys must be the good guy because they're clearly evil and they're pointing fingers. So let's just assume the guys they're smearing are the good guys. But then you
Mm-hmm.
go to the Nazi side, and what are they doing? They have their own mess and they have their own disinformation, and you're like, well, this is
Mm.
not much better. So
Yeah.
it's, you've got two bullies pointing the finger at the other bully while
Right.
they beat up people, kind of thing. So
Right. Right.
could that be the case with the current Russia Ukraine? It's something you have to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another aspect that's in here is that you know, there's just a lot of questions involved, and it's very unclear here In terms of, again, I don't think it's so easy to establish a good guy, bad guy narrative and break it down that way. There's been a lot of things said about Ukraine that are concerning, and so there's two sides to the topic. Um, I guess what I'm trying to imply too is this is something I saw in a lot of the social media kind of push. This I've seen people even from my own family and certain nephews or uncles or things like that. Extended family who have background going back to Ukraine.
Oh,
Actually,
wow. Wow.
there are some Ukrainians in my family on my mother's side, and they've said things like, "Well, they've tried to associate modern Ukraine with the oppressed, victimized Ukraine of the Ukrainian genocide
Hmm.
under Russia, for
I see.
example." And the problem is there is not a one-to-one correlation, because the argument they're saying there is, well, it's just Russia at it again. The problem is Russia
Right.
may not be communist, oppressive Russia anymore. We don't know.
Right.
And if anyone's not studied modern Russia, they shouldn't pretend to be an expert
Pretend.
on the topic.
Hmm. Hmm.
In terms of Ukraine of then and Ukraine of now, probably back then, I don't think I think it's hard to argue that Ukrainians were absolutely victims.
Hmm.
But are the current Ukrainians today totally victims? And if you were to try to break it down into a victim oppressor mentality, is there a breakdown in the Ukrainian culture where you have some elements of Ukrainian are radical lunatics who want to lob rockets into Russia and kill Russians,
Hmm.
and others are actual victims of this who are caught between the fire of things between Russian radicals and Ukrainian radicals. So the whole
Hmm.
picture is probably way more complicated than
Yes.
people make it out to
No,
be.
yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, you've got a good point. It is a lot more complicated because I don't know 100%. I'm not an expert on Ukrainian history or anything like that, but from what I've kind of gathered, the Ukraine is not exclusively Russian. It's made up of different demographics. So I think there's a Polish area, there's a German part, and you also have the Americans having an influence as well. More recently, in the recent maybe the last 50 years, I don't know how far back that goes, but there is some kind of influence there, especially when they set up the current leader. I think he has a relationship with America. With the America, but I think there's something there because they had a
right. I've
president
heard that as
and
well. Yeah,
they
yes.
they ousted him somehow, some way. Um, and I just want to say one thing regarding the situation. Whoever, it's pretty easy. Yeah, a child can understand this, but whoever uses the first nuke, they've lost the narrative. They lost the war. So if Russia is proven to use a nuclear weapon or whatever it is, but I think minimum like a nuclear weapon, they've lost. There's no way they can come back from it and say we're the good guys. And that would prove that would be their downfall unless they're framed. Someone frames them and uses, I don't know, whoever has a nuclear weapon and they frame Russia as using it. That's going to be very detrimental. Hopefully that does not happen, y'all willing. But that's all I have to say about that. I think time will reveal what their intentions are, and if they would just minimize the amount of casualties, which it seems to be what they're trying to do, especially when they declared a ceasefire recently in order to open the the travel channel so people can leave for humanitarian reasons. So I don't know. I don't know what else to say about this. It's still in its infancy, but yeah, I do pray for those people on both sides that they would come to a peaceful resolution. But if you read Revelation, it's only going to get worse. Not maybe not in Russia, Ukraine, but in the world, it's going to kind of with Jerusalem as the focus point of all the violence. But anyway, yeah, that's all I have to say
Right.
about that for this
And
time.
that's also an interesting element. As believers, we're commanded to pray for world leaders
Yeah.
in the hopes that they will repent, change their ways. And
Hmm.
I mean, it would be of huge benefit if any of these world leaders, if they suddenly had an
Yeah.
encounter with Jesus.
Hmm.
There's a lot
Hmm.
of value to that for sure.
Yeah.
So that is another aspect is, of course, the concepts of the prophecies of Revelation and moving forward into what are called the birth pains for
Hmm.
the return
Hmm.
of the Messiah.
Yeah.
And that is something that's going to happen whether people like it or not,
Yeah.
on the Lord's timing and based on his observations.
Yes.
And so there's a certain process to go through that's a very challenging time for humans. And
Yeah.
I guess we've got to pray for and count for a lot of mercy from the Lord in this. I
Mhm.
like the birth pains analogy too,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
often hear stories of women going through labor. They say sometimes they're in a lot of pain and they say ugly things they don't mean um, during the time. Now, this should you be you here suffering
Yeah.
in this pain to that they might
Right.
say that to
Right.
their husband
Yeah. They'll call them
right now
names.
while
Right.
the human population is going through a lot of pains. There's going to be a lot of people like, where's God in this? what
Yes.
what what kind of crappy God do you guys serve that he loves
Mhm.
suffering? He's a psychopath or something like that.
Right. Right.
I my prayer would be that God would not be too offended, because people are kind of controlled by a certain amount of pain because they're like, what is all this?
Mhm.
Right, they're overwhelmed. But on the same hand, there's a reason for the process, there's a reason for the suffering.
Yeah.
And hold on and don't give up is a reliable message, and keep pursuing truth, and try to be as level-headed and not passion bound as you can in terms
Mm.
of analyzing the information we're presented. And on another topic, something that does come to my mind that's interesting is, this is the only, I don't know whether you view it as privilege or responsibility in terms of whether a good thing or a bad thing, or a bit of both, pros and cons. This new age of technology, having all this information and news at our fingertips.
Okay.
In a lot of ways, previously, this kind of level of information was not available to everybody of the average person, say
Mhm.
going back 300, 400 years ago.
Yeah.
So there is a certain amount of stress that's come to us from our own societal advancement, and a debate we're figuring out of how to use these media, because I think it's possible for a person to, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. Jordan Peterson had that interesting discussion where he's famed for saying, you have to sort of be able to clean up your own room
Yes.
first before you
Mhm.
get into the complex geopolitical issues.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
very easy for a person to get totally consumed by what's happening in the world, in the news, and the ideological debates and agendas of it, and have totally other areas in neglect, and you're falling behind on your studies of how to build a
Right.
car or something like that, whatever you're invested in. So we've all got to be careful to adopt a certain amount of self-control and not lose
Mhm.
sight of other things too.
Mhm. Yeah. Actually, in the previous video we did, or the interview we had, I wanted to bring up that point. I forgot to. It was one of the 12 rules for life. He mentioned that assume that the person you're listening to or talking with, you can learn something from them, and that's kind of the approach that I take with people when I'm having a debate. That's the approach that I have to remind myself to have, and to also love them as well. Um, yeah, I don't know what else to say about this, but I've got a lot of peace of mind, not just talking with you, but also from learning about the ministries of, I don't know if you're familiar with Joel Richardson.
I'm not
Uh,
too familiar with that name,
and
no.
okay, so Joel Richardson is an author of the book The Islamic Antichrist, which is a New York Times bestseller. He's got a number of books talking about what he believes will be the Antichrist and what will be the beast. And that his interpretation based on scriptures has given me a lot of peace. Before I was introduced to him, my mind was I was like a doomer. I guess you could say I was a doomer and gloomer, and not to say Jesus is not coming back. Yeshua is coming back. I have no doubt about that. But the timeline as to when that's coming, I was always, or my mind was more, okay, he's coming next month or next year. It can be within the next 3 years. But now that I've read his books, it is coming, certainly, but there are certain signs that even Christ himself said we have to see, which is the Antichrist being revealed, the two witnesses have to be there, the third temple has to be established. That's one of it's not here yet, but we know Israel is in their land, and before 1948 they were not. So that is prophecy being fulfilled before our eyes. So that step is a major step. and Jerusalem is the capital. We know that. And you also need what else? The nations to surround Jerusalem, like the not all the nations, but its particular nations specified in prophecy, such as Libya and so on, and a lot of Middle Eastern countries and North African ones. But when you see those, that's when Jesus Christ said, flee to the mountains. Don't even get your cloak or whatever. Just run. Don't waste time because they're going to take you out. And that has not happened. I mean, some people believe it happened 80, 70, but a lot of those prophecies, and when you look at Revelation, they do relate to the Antichrist and the two witnesses, and also the Son of Man returning to the earth to fight for Jerusalem, and that we know has not happened yet. So that's why I have a lot of peace of mind in regards to what's happening right now. Although people are suffering, and I should not make light of it. Although I have peace of mind being in Canada, I'm just we're both blessed to be here, frankly, because we're not afraid of a missile flying. I mean, it could change, but right now we're so blessed with so much peace, unprecedented peace. But yeah, I recommend that book for sure. Islamic Antichrist is a really good book just to start off with. It's really, oh man, it really shook my life and my world, because I realized that Revelation is not only very true, but the Islamic prophecies line up with Revelation. They're just on the opposite end, because the Muslims believe the Antichrist is a good guy, and they believe that Jesus Christ is the Antichrist. So it's like, it's everything that Revelation says. It validates it, but it reverses it, saying that these are good things. The beast is good. So it's exactly what Satan would say. Essentially, Satan is validating, God's plan. Well, I'm the guy. I'm gonna subvert his plan. His plan. I'm gonna be the one to defeat God. I don't care what he thinks. I am the Most High. We'll see if he can win. Yeah.
Well, I've heard a lot of views on the Antichrist, that's
yeah.
for sure. And
Yeah.
I'm starting to think a lot of them are true simultaneously, and that it matters more complex, because it's interesting. I've heard some saying that Antichrist will come in the form of sort of a satanic manifestation, looking like ET or an alien, which makes a lot of sense to me, because how would you fulfill a prophecy of luring people to battle against this returned Jesus, this supernatural entity? Well, tell people Jesus is just another alien space brother and he's evil. It's like Independence Day. We got to just fire lasers at him, and you can definitely lure people into that.
Well,
am I saying that's what it'll be? I don't know. I'm more concerned about, I'll be honest about my personal view in this, is that I think there's always two antichrists to watch out. In fact, there's actually many antichrists, biblically speaking.
There are many.
So I think you can have a plethora of antichrist religions and antichrist movements operating simultaneously. And my thought is that the adversary tries to work in every single one of us. So we have to keep an eye that we don't become antichrist by becoming demonic in our character traits and our handling of the word, and obedience, stances on obedience to the Most High God. But that said, I absolutely believe there will be a physical manifestation of Antichrist. Which one it will be, I'm not 100% sure at this time, but I know it will not be good. It's all ugly stuff that they stand for, one way or the other.
Well, doesn't sorry to interrupt, but doesn't Scripture say that the spirit of the Antichrist is the one who denies that God is the Father and then Jesus Christ is his Son? Like, that's what it says. This is the Antichrist.
Right, that's absolutely right. Definition. Now that's interesting and funny to segue into the topic of an ET thing, because it's weird, because like it'd be like, how's ET phone home related? Well, interestingly, I'm reading Gary Bates' book, Alien Intrusion. These are guys kind of associated with Creation Ministries. They interviewed a lot of people who've had abduction experiences.
Oh boy!
And they've definitely experienced something. Whether it be an encounter with a demon or an actual ET is going to be the debate of the person. But there are certain things that are consistently reported in their encounters with these extraterrestrial beings. And the first is that they always kind of almost always abuse them, often sexual experiments and things are reported like that, weird, far out there stuff. But the ETs often try to correct people's religious beliefs. So they're meeting what they believe is an extraterrestrial entity in this abduction experience, and they often start telling people things about Jesus. And one of the things they keep telling people is, you can't believe he's the Son of God. He's just another alien space brother. Yeah,
No
you can't make
way.
that up. So apparently,
Wow.
supposedly highly evolved aliens that came from a spacecraft from a planet far, far away care a lot about whether you believe
Yeah.
Jesus is the Son of God
Or
or not,
not.
and all these other
Right.
things. So
Interesting.
this is very
Yeah.
suspicious behavior for the Space Brothers.
Oh boy. Yeah. Wow. Okay. With that, I think we'll end the video
Yeah,
here.
no
Is
problem.
there anything else you wanted to mention before we close here?
No, that's it. I think we covered every topic pretty
Yeah.
well for now, and
Yeah.
yeah, we've just got to keep watchful of how things unfold.
Yeah. Well, I pray that that Yah gives you peace of mind and peace in your heart, and the opens your eyes to see, when these things are gonna happen in terms of Revelation really ramping up. Because I do believe we're in the birth pangs, but we're still a ways off until that third temple again. Once it built, once it is established, and they start building. Here's the cornerstone. We've got the Levitical priesthood back. We've got the Sanhedrin, but I don't know. There's going to be a lot of things. I think that has to trigger that, because I don't think the Jewish people have they don't have an urgency to do that yet. But I think that might be triggered. I'm just going to speculate right now that it might be triggered with the start, or not the start, with the revival of what's called the Islamic Caliphate, which is essentially what the Ottoman Empire had going until it ended in 1920, something like that. That was the last
Right.
caliphate. So if that comes, and that's what Joel Richardson is saying is going to happen, if that is revived, then I think the Jewish people will say, okay, they revived their caliphate. We got to have something of our own, because we know what this means. I mean, as dangerous as Iran is developing a nuclear weapon, a united Islamic contingent is a lot worse. So we have to react, and that might take us, having a revived interest in our who we are and our God and the temple and everything. And we need Messiah, because they're still looking for him. That's as much as the Jews don't believe in Jesus Christ. They long for the Messiah. That's the greatest longing for every Jewish person. So they need him to rescue him. That's in all the prophecies. So they do believe that the Messiah will come to rescue them, and that's exactly what's going to happen. And they're gonna realize it was Jesus Christ all along. That's why they're gonna cry. It was
Yes.
you. Is it your first time or second time? That's what they're gonna ask him. Okay. Well, I guess I'll end it here. I was amazed we were able to cover all those massive topics. That's pretty much like 3 years in like an hour.
Yeah.
You think about
Apologies
it.
for that. My brother is saying something in the background. I have no idea he's talking.
Oh,
So
it's okay. No, don't worry. I can't. I
yeah.
can't hear it at all, to be honest. Okay. Well,
Oh, okay.
I'll end recording here, and encourage everyone to go to Erik's channel and subscribe to him as well. He's got a lot of very interesting and knowledgeable things for you to learn on his website there, or not website, the YouTube page. Is it the Truth Crusade? Is that the name of your channel?
Yeah, yeah. I mostly recommend my BitChute at this point because
Okay, BitChute. Both. I'll put both up
it's not
in the
being
description.
suppressed as just my YouTube
Yeah.
is, but
Okay.
I can link both for them. And
No
plus, I
problem.
consequently, in response to that, I've not uploaded as much videos to my YouTube as lately as I have on my BitChute. I focused on that
Right.
more. I might put some on YouTube anyways, because there's always a chance they'll repeal some of their
Yeah.
suppression policies sooner or later, and views might kick up a bit. But for now, it's like
Sure.
one view on my every new video. It gets stuck there, so it's kind of discouraging.
Yeah, it is frustrating. It is frustrating, but I don't know. It's just, I don't know. We have no control over that. Sometimes we just have to do our best and use a good thumbnail, and
Mhm.
and just make sure everything is just genuine. And I think that's what people want. Just want authenticity, and
Yes.
and also a topic that they want to learn about, or hear about. Okay, so that's all for this interview. Thank you very much, Erik, for your time, and God bless you all, everyone watching. And until next time, this is MGC, Music, Gaming, and Commentary.